kids first came to the school, they didn't know anything.
When society closes its eyes to its horrific realities, the realities do not go away. Instead, like the children you see here, they are left as social outcasts in the deserted outskirts of the city, and they are forgotten. Except this town, where a few years back, one woman took it upon herself to change the lives of these children for the better.
My name is Rubina Shakil. 5 years ago, I talked to my husband about letting me use the porch of our house to educate the children of the people who worked in our house and the other deserted children walking in the neighborhood streets, wasting their lives doing nothing all day. I started with 5 kids. Every day, my partner and I, both believing in our cause, set off to recruit more students, counseling their parents to send their kids to my house for basic education, while their parents worked during the day at people's houses or as laborers.
Watching these children live in unimaginable poverty, Rubina's husband became as involved and determined in this cause.
The kids that Rubina sought out are street children. I call them so because they practically live on streets, where they are exposed to all kinds of violence and exploitation.
How could anyone start with one small porch outside their house and turn it into an entire establishment where not 5 but now more than 300 students gather regularly? The answer is very surprising.
Aabroo is like a train on a very long journey. In the last 5 years, everyone has played their role in this journey to take it to where it stands today. Everyone has worked in their own capacity, as children, volunteers, teachers, donors. What started as a day school for 5 kids has turned into an 8-building establishment called Aabroo Welfare Schools, where we have 1,500 children enrolled as regular students. Their stationery, uniforms, shoes, toys, education, lunch, and medical expenses all available completely free of charge. The only source of funding for all of this is the generous donation from the community. Donations amounting to 250,000 rupees, about $4,100 per month, are put towards the project. The building that we are sitting in at the moment is also a donation by Mia Saeed Ahmad. His wish is to enroll at least 1,000 students at the site. Presently, there are 350 students enrolled.
Rubina located an area where young children loitered in the streets, collecting garbage, selling newspapers, some begging and others pickpocketing. The most difficult part was finding a donor who could arrange for a building or living space which could provide the boundary walls for a basic school.
The area that I wanted to target next was the real slum of the community. You can see the environment these families lived in and where these children are raised. When I first visited the area, I saw drug addicts, almost all men, lying unconscious in broad daylight. Most women and their children were gone either to beg or earn some money for the day. The women I spoke to in these tents were extremely resistant towards the idea of education of any kind. I had to think of incentives such as food and clothes and emotional incentives to almost blackmail them, sometimes even with stories of how they were leading their children towards fire by letting them live in such disparity. I was partially successful. They would allow the children to meet in one of the tents for day schooling, but even so, attendance was sparse. So in the weeks that followed, while a teacher taught the children that did show up, I would hunt down the remaining kids, one tent after another, those hiding and those still unconvinced to come to the teacher. For the women who still resisted, I prayed for God's fear in the hearts of the women, for they had a chance to help their kids. Our part of our work was that while children went to class, the mothers were taught how to pray. After 3 years, these women have learned to read, and their children can read and write. One of our success stories is of this girl, Amna. When we first arrived in the area, she was on her way to collect trash for the day with her brother. She was not at all willing to give up her routine, where every evening for the past 8 years, Amna had been begging on the streets. Today, not only has she stopped begging herself, in fact, she stops other kids from doing as well and helps children with their schoolwork.
Now it's different. I don't like to beg because people would tell me to go find work, or they would swear at me. Now I can teach my son how to read and write.
These people, especially the ones living in small clusters, truth is that I cannot make a significant difference in their lives just by teaching them how to read and write. What I can do is teach them the concept of unity, self-respect, and humanity. More than learning how to read and write, these people need to realize that they are human beings as well. And respect from others comes from first respecting yourself. Without any exaggeration, our society would treat these people worse than animals. They're used to being yelled at for their attention. They need to know that they have a name and they have an identity that comes with it. They have an inner hatred for the unequal society in which they live, and it's justified. They see the temporary tents in which they live, and they see the mansions worth millions right next to their abandoned slums. You should see the state of the slum when it rains. The only reason they can stay controlled is because of the social pressures. But in reality, if they could, believe me, they would even rip the clothes off your back. By keeping society's poorest in this condition, society lets evil breed. They steal, rape, murder, do drugs, or name any crime. And then, without any purpose in life, these innocent minds become perfect recruits for terrorist training.
Another question was how Rubina found land where they had settled.
Well, it's actually common practice here. When someone takes over another person's land illegally, be it government property or somebody's private property, he uses poor people like them to make temporary settlements on the land. While the case for property goes to court and the person who illegally took the land has used his influence and political contacts to win the case for ownership, he will kick these people off the land that they have lived on and build his multi-million shopping mall or plaza. It's pretty common, which is why you find settlements like this everywhere.
What will happen to these children once they've completed basic primary education? Also, how far do you want to take this project?
First of all, I have to find work for these kids and their parents, so at least they're not begging to earn. I don't have the resources yet to get these children to finish middle or high school, but to get them off the streets, I'd rather they work than beg. To do that, I need to train them in some field so that they can find jobs. For that, I need people in different fields of work to set up vocational training centers at our schools where the teenagers can get technical training in a field that they might interest them. I have a vocational school for sewing for girls. We have teachers who teach them how to stitch clothes. We needed a steady source of income to keep the Aabroo project running. I started another project, Kachra project, where we have a van that regularly collects garbage from people's homes, takes it to the recycling company, and we get money back for that. Recycling a month's trash from one house can fund the education of one child. As far as the kids who live in other small groups and settlements are concerned, I want to keep looking, finding more and more of such groups to include them in our mission. I would like to hire a van and teachers who can be dropped off every day to their settlements for a couple of hours in the day and then picked up for return.
I asked Rubina if they kept a record of the donations and money they had received over the years.
We have a record of every rupee spent, and every month when we have our executive board meeting, we go over all the numbers, how much was donated in cash or in kind, what was it used for, and so on. We have a team of people to do our books.
Every year, the organization has 2 audits, internal and external. These are done by a very respectable accounting firm. After 4 years, CBR gave Aabroo a donee status, which means all donations made to Aabroo are now tax exempt. We're hoping that this accreditation will improve our funding status.
One of the bigger obstacles facing Rubina is the scarce amount of funding. People can't promise funding forever, so she is always seeking out more donors and new sources of income for Aabroo. When Rubina asked the government for help in educating these children and this project, the ministers responded by asking Rubina for help because they considered public schools to be in worse conditions. They've commended Rubina in her accomplishments and have offered her to join their work in government. Rubina finds her own project more fulfilling.
When I asked Rubina why she wanted to take on such a project, she said, "I want to create a sense of self-respect and confidence in these children. That is called Aabroo in Urdu, hence the name Aabroo Welfare Organization."